Jeanette with Untamed and Unapologetic. And today I have Christina with me. Christina and I have known each other. We were trying to calculate. I want to say it's like 8 years.
Years, yeah.
Yeah. So how did we meet? Tell everybody.
So it was, I believe, maybe the end of 2016, early 2017, when I moved back to San Antonio and I went into a private practice. So I started as a contractor, and me and Jeanette ended up in the same room doing paperwork together. And then it turned out we were going to be in the same office. So we shared an office in downtown San Antonio. And that's kind of how our friendship and our a relationship as colleagues started. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about how we know each other.
We got close to each other and then we kind of just kept in touch throughout the years. And I know you've moved all over the place, got married, had babies, did all the things, and now you're back. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you've been up to?
Yeah, so like Jeanette said, I moved from San Antonio in about 2019, right after me and my husband got married. So I met my husband when I moved back to San Antonio. Things just kind of aligned and worked out. We got married, and he is military, so we PCS'd. We ended up in St. Louis for 2 years. About 2 years, 2.5 years, moved back to San Antonio. And at that point, I was pregnant with my daughter. I was about 6 months pregnant when my husband had to leave for 6 months, could not come back for the birth of my daughter. And so I had my daughter here. My husband was at a training for the federal government as part of his job. And then when he got back, my daughter was 2 months. So he finally was able to have a relationship and meet his daughter at 2 months old. And we moved to Miami. And at that point, we were going to be in Miami indefinitely. God had another plan for us. And a year later, we ended up briefly moving back to San Antonio, then moving to Dallas. Then 2 years later, moving back to San Antonio, which is where I'm at now. So lots of moving within the
Yeah,
past
talk
6 years of my life.
There's
So,
tons of challenges right there. And I know you're a therapist like me, and we have
yeah.
clients that come in and they struggle navigating all of these challenges and transitions in life. Like, how did you do that? Because that was in what, a small time frame
Yeah.
where it was just something right after the other.
Yes. So, when we moved to St. Louis, obviously we didn't have kids at that point, and I was very excited when we found out we were moving there. But then the time got closer and I developed a lot of anxiety about moving. So much so that like on the drive there, I was driving behind my husband and I had to call him, and we were here on 1604 and like 35 just down the road from where I'm at now. And I said, I don't know what's going on. I think I'm having like some kind of anxiety attack and I need you to drive me. So we put my car on a U-Haul and we left. But I share that story because when I got to St. Louis, I was working for a corporation that I had been working for here in San Antonio as well. And my anxiety just kind of kept unfolding and it just got worse and worse. And I told my husband, I don't think that I'm happy right now. I think that in order for me to be happy, I want to do what I was setting out to do in San Antonio, which was opening my own private practice. And so I was so scared. I mean, I was like fearful. I didn't know anybody there. We didn't have family there. And so it was just me and him. And I said, if I don't take this leap of faith now, it's not going to happen because I'm going to keep letting fear drive my decision making. And I can't live that way. That's not who I am. And so one day to the next, I went to work and I literally just quit my job, which I've never done in my life. So that caused a lot of stress.
Yeah.
But I said, you know what? God is He's my light. He is going to guide me in whatever I do. And that's what I did. I started networking with people and opened up my practice in another state, which I never even envisioned for myself, but I did it. So met tons of people, filled my caseload within a couple of months, which again, I didn't think that that was possible. But had I not taken that leap of faith, then I would have never known, right? So I share that as being like a very pivotal moment for me in knowing that if I don't listen to my heart, listen to what I need, that I'm going to miss out on many opportunities. And I think that to answer your question of how did I do it and how do I continue to do it, it's really listening to my intuition. Yes, I'm still fearful. Like that is a given. I'm human, but I kind of try to take leaps of faith where I know I need to. And that's kind of what's helped me navigate living in so many different cities, because I find the beauty in each one, even though it was tough. I can't sit here and lie and say everything was picture perfect. It wasn't. It was tough being in, especially in Miami. Although
Mhm.
it was a gorgeous place, we were always at the beach. Like, I was alone raising a 2-month old. My husband was always at work. I wasn't working. I was teetering on finishing my PhD. And I
Mhm.
was like, how am I going to do this? Like, I don't
Yeah.
have a support system here, you know? And so it was hard. It was hard, but just kind of keeping that my vision on my goals.
Yeah, it sounds like you've hit a lot of, like, I always say, like, that moment when you hit the wall, right? And you're just like, something's wrong. We don't know what it is, but you feel like that anxiety, or you have a panic attack, or
Yeah.
you feel unhappy or sad. And like when those things happen and we hit that wall, it's like you said, you either jump or you stay in discomfort, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you chose to jump.
Yes, and I definitely chose to jump because for me personally, when something doesn't feel right and when I've tried a ton of things to make this one thing feel right and it still doesn't, that's a red flag, right? And then that's something that I would share with whoever's listening to this podcast, right? If you've tried a number of things and it's still not working, then maybe you need to reevaluate and do something different, right? And that's where those jumps come in, those leaps of faith, and just really relying on your intuition and then reaching out to people who are there to support you, because you don't have to be on an island, which for a while when I was in Miami, I felt like I was on an island by myself, wasn't making or keeping my professional connections the way I had been previously. I didn't have mom friends over there. Like, I was so alone and it was just hard. And I didn't like that space,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't who I was, but I was just kind of staying there because it was what was comfortable in that moment, but it really wasn't, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. But let's kind of talk a little bit more about that, because you mentioned, like, from all the different moves, and then you had the baby and you moved again, you were on the island. But prior to being on the island, like, you were making moves, like, you were doing things.
Yes.
And then there's a big transition and it
Mhm.
stalled you again. And I heard you say there were multiple stalls before
Yes.
you were able to jump again. So, like, what do you think causes us as humans, right, during those transitions to get on that island?
I think, speaking from experience and just kind of knowing what I know about people, right? And
Mhm.
development and everything, I think we get into this perceived comfort zone that then feels like if I venture out of that, I may not fit in. I may not be who I used to be, right? Because I think a part of us is always grasping, well, I used to be this well-connected person who knew everything I needed to know about my profession, and I could reach out to this colleague and that colleague. But we kind of get blinded a little when we put ourselves on this island. And then it just feels good to stay there, because then it at that point, when you're already so overwhelmed with a lot of other things in life, it takes energy to reach out and to seek support, right? And you're like, well, maybe I'll just stay here, right? But then something clicks, right? At least for me, something clicked.
What was
One,
it?
this isn't who I am. I don't want to be here. It doesn't really feel good. I'm just kind of staying here because it's easy right now. And so I think that's kind of what keeps people stuck and in those little islands that they form for themselves.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I've been on islands myself many times in my life, and I just remember, like, whenever I hit it and I'm there, it feels so good to
mhm.
be miserable sometimes, right?
Yeah,
Because I mean, like you said, it takes effort to try something new, even
yeah,
though, like, there's that internal battle, like, okay, this is comfortable, this is fine. But yet again, like, there's that other part of us that's like, no, that's not fine. This isn't working for you. But
right.
I mean, what do we do, like, when we hit that and like that internal battle hits? You said something has to click.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, for me, what clicked was the fact that I had never been a person who felt like I was on an island. I always felt well connected, whether it was in my professional life or even with my family, right? And so, like, for instance, when I was in Miami, I found myself constantly talking to my mom, who's my number one supporter, always has been, always will be. But I didn't make an effort to reach out to other people in my family or even friends. And I started seeing that. And I was like, this doesn't feel good,
Mhm.
because I love my friends, I love my family. And so I started reaching out a little bit more, um, reconnecting even on a personal, on a professional level. I reached out to some of the women who mentored me in my doc program and started just reconnecting with them, even if it was just like, hey, I just want to chat about life. Like, let's just talk, and that was how I feel like things got easier, and I started integrating myself back to not only my friendships and family, but also into my professional role. So,
Yeah, I love that you said that connection, right?
yes.
I always find that whenever we do get on that island, we isolate ourselves to be just on that tiny little piece of rock, right? And in fact, connection is always a goal of mine every year because I find myself detaching from connection at times in life, especially when
Yeah.
things get overwhelming or different or
Mhm.
new. And the one thing that always brings me back is to reach out to somebody.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that is the key. And I think it's the key for not only us, right, as we sit here and speak as professional women who have overcome things, but I think for our clients, right? Sometimes when we work with people who have isolated themselves and are suffering from depression, anxiety, trauma, other, mental health issues, we as counselors want to help them seek connection again, because that is a protective factor. That is something that will help protect you from falling deeper into whatever mental health issue you're suffering from. So connection is key, right? And I think it's very primal, right? If we look back thousands of years, I mean, people lived together in, like,
Family.
I'm gonna say pods. I don't know what formal they're called, right? But people lived that way. They lived together. They ate together. They went to, hunt together, whatever it is they were doing, right? Like, people did that together. And so it's important to seek connection, because I think it's very primal and it's very ingrained in just the human existence. So,
Yeah, I have a little, and I know you have littles too, but the Croods kind of come to mind when you say
yeah.
that primal, because like I don't know if anyone's seen the Croods, but it's like a cave family, right? And
Yeah.
they sleep in a pile for protection, and they're together for
Yes.
protection. And when an outsider comes in, they become very weary of it because they're not in their circle.
Yes.
A
Yeah.
lot of times as humans, like when we start to like detach from the world and we start to isolate, we have that sense of like anything on the outside of the island is danger.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So then it drives the fear, it drives the anxiety, the depression, the negative self-talk, right? And so it drives all of that. But when we're connected, 9 times out of 10, we're probably going to see something very different, because we're going to have a support system to help us navigate whatever it is we're going through. The fears that maybe were there when I was on the island aren't going to be as prevalent, because I have somebody who maybe doesn't fully understand, but is there to listen, is there to offer support, love. You know what I mean? And so it's just, connection is key to everything. And if you get one thing from what I'm saying and what Jeanette is saying today, it's that build connections, because they are what drives just the existence of being human.
Yeah, I think they kind of minimize that fear because I know, like, being born a human, we always have that instinct for fear. Like, it's there it's for protection. It's just
Right.
when in this day and age, right, that fear actually becomes something that holds us back. And
Mhm.
I found myself, like, even when starting this business, I remember when I first became a counselor and I was first licensed, I was married at that time. And my husband at that time, he was like, you need to start your own practice. Like, what are you waiting for? Like, you need to do this thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, no. Like, I don't even know the first thing of how to start a business because they don't teach us that, right?
Right.
But
Yeah. I
oh,
wish they
talk about
did, but they
fear.
don't.
Yeah. it's all about theory and like that's it. Like they don't
Yeah.
teach us how to be real therapists because we have to be real humans to be real therapists.
Right.
In that time, like I let the fear drive me and say, no, don't go forward because you're going to fall. Or like it stopped me so many times. But it was only when like I went through severe trauma, right? That's usually
Hmm.
when it happens.
Yeah.
When you go through trauma, you have that chance to recreate yourself.
Yes.
And so I recreated a version of me that was less fearful of the world. But that came with a lot of connection and a lot of support.
Yes. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
what would you say to somebody who is in that like transition period in life, right?
Mhm.
Where they've always let fear stop them and they've always isolated themselves and detached from everyone because that was comfort. Like, how do we get people to understand that those bad things that happen can actually be seen as good and we can actually let go of fear in those moments if we allow ourselves?
Yeah, I think, what I would tell someone who is afraid to even to take a leap or just do something different, it's think of, yes, the worst that can happen likely does not happen,
Yeah.
right? That is the anxiety that drives the fear, right? Which is what we would call those negative self-talk, right? And all of that. That's what's driving that continued fear, right? The worst thing that can happen is maybe you fail at what you're doing. However, there is still an opportunity to learn from that, right? Because maybe it's not like I go and I try to open my own practice and I don't get as many clients, but I'm still getting a few clients. Then what have I learned, right? And so one thing that I tell like my students, for example, is have a growth mindset when it comes to your fears, to your anxieties, and your worries, because if you have a fixed mindset, then it's never going to happen. You're never going to do it. You're never going to accomplish it because it's all or nothing, right? But if you have a growth mindset, you can take a time when maybe you didn't succeed or you didn't succeed as you wanted to, and you can use that to drive you forward, right? What did I learn about myself from that situation? You can ask yourself, what strengths from that situation am I taking and moving forward to drive me in the direction where I want to be, right? And so really keep a growth mindset when it comes to your fears, worries, and anxieties, because that is what's going to drive you forward.
Yeah, I love that you say that. I know I have a lot of clients that come in, even friends, right?
Mhm.
And when they're stuck in that fixed mindset and listening to all the negative talk that they say to themselves, like you can't do it, people don't care about you, whatever it
Yeah.
is that it's that's coming into their heads, it's really, really hard, right? To go from what you've always known to go to something new, which is that growth mindset. And growth mindset, I mean, that's scary.
Yeah, it is. It's scary because you have to again make and seek new connections. You have to ask questions. You have to kind of be at the forefront versus hiding in the background,
Mhm.
right? And again, sometimes people tend to hide in the background, and I've been guilty of doing that because it feels comfortable in that moment, right? Because I don't put energy into things, right? And so sometimes being in the background puts you back in that comfort zone, right? But I think there's a saying something like life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And that sounds very cliche and like, oh my gosh, but it's true, right? It's so
It is.
true.
Yeah. How did you get into your like how were you able to step into that growth mindset whenever you found yourself stepping back? Because I always say like life is a roller coaster. Like we keep going and it's going to be happy and fun and then it's going to hit the lows and then it's going to be happy and fun and then it's going to hit the lows. Like there is no I'm fixed, right?
Right. Yeah.
So whenever you fall and whenever you find yourself on that island, because I know I find myself there multiple times, right?
Yeah.
What do you do to step into that version of yourself that's going to allow you to switch to that growth mindset?
Yeah, I really have to just kind of for a minute dive deep internal, right? Just go internally into what is driving that fixed mindset, right? And a lot of times it comes back to fear. And for instance, very recently, I found myself in a fixed mindset of, I'm just a mom. That's all I am. I'm just a mom now. I went to school for so many years, but I'm not utilizing my education the way I wanted to at one point, right? And so when I started getting in that mindset, it brought some discomfort. It was comforting for a while, but then it brought a lot of discomfort. And so I just dig internally into my deepest emotions, kind of figure out what's driving that, and then do one thing that is going to help get me out of that to whatever degree it may be. And so recently I was like, I'm just kind of stuck in routine. So I started taking golf lessons. I don't know how to play golf. I know nothing about golf. What motivated me was my husband plays and his family plays, and I want to be able to play with them. So I'm like, I'm going to do this. If I sit here and I tell you the first lesson that I went to, I was so nervous. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like a little kid going into a room of a bunch of grown adults. And I was kind of like in the background. And then I met a girl who was also kind of nervous. And we started talking to each other. And it was like, why are we so nervous? We don't get this. But I think it was because it was something completely out of my comfort zone, something new. I didn't even have proper golf clothes. I was just wearing yoga pants, and so like it just kind of made me feel that way, right? Just uncomfortable. But, I went to my second one, my third one, and it gave me something new and something different to focus on that let me remember the fact that I'm more than just one thing. I'm more than just a mom, right? Yes, that is my number one role and I value it and I treasure it. But I'm also a professional and I'm also just a woman who wants to have fun, right? And so going to these golf lessons allowed me to just be a woman who wants to have fun
Yeah,
again,
no, I love that. I love that you did that because I kind of do the same thing, right? Whenever I find myself stuck in a slump, because like you said, I think we forget that we have multiple roles in life.
Yes. Yeah,
Like it's not
absolutely.
just mom, it's not just wife, it's not just therapist. Like we
Right.
have so many roles. And when you have to shift the hat, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of hard, especially when you stop for a minute and you end up lost.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's scary. A lot of unknown, there's so many emotions wrapped around when you switch a hat that you've worn for so long to wear multiple at once again,
Yeah.
So yeah, while it's scary, it's something that I challenge people to do, right? Put on those multiple hats and see how it feels. Ask yourself, how does it feel right now wearing the role of, for instance, mom and professional,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it might feel overwhelming and really tough,
Yeah.
but you're going to get through it, right? And you're going to get through it again. I keep going back to connection. That's like my number one thing. You're going to get through it when you seek out other like-minded individuals who just get it.
Yeah, and
So,
there's so many of us that actually get it.
yes.
Like, I just don't think a lot of us tell people our stories. Kind of like
Yeah.
we talked about earlier, like we keep our stories hidden because we don't think they're important or we don't think anybody's going to learn from them and so we don't
Mhm.
say anything. But this is a common struggle. I know I've experienced it, you've experienced it, we know people that have experienced it. We just get stuck
Yeah.
because the overwhelm like gets to us and then we forget who we are.
Yeah.
So I know how I always like reconnect with myself, but how do you reconnect with yourself? I know you said you get out of your comfort zone and you do something discomforting, but how do you maintain that?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Are there
definitely,
special things that you do? Like, what do you do?
I think, first I want to say that it is a hard balance to strike, trying to maintain that sense of personal self, right? And so for anybody who's battling with that or struggling with that at the moment, I want you to know you're not alone. And two, like if there are some days you fall off that wagon, it's okay. Just get back on, right? Like we all have our bad moments. But for me, I think personally, I've had to find, again, 1 to 3 things that really help motivate me and keep me energized. For me, it's exercise. Like, I love to exercise. I know when me and you first met, you probably knew this about me, but I used to run marathons and like just long distance. And that's what kept me happy and motivated, right? And so for a while, I lost all of that because, again, it was like I was mom, mom, mom. mom, and that was it. And I even didn't exercise for a long time, but didn't feel good. And so I went back to the gym, and I love going to the gym. I love doing like the high intensity workouts, love rowing and lifting and running, right? And so that truly does help me 100%. Another thing that I do that it maybe isn't, the healthiest, but I think it's a little treat for myself. I love coffee. So I will find a new coffee shop. I will go to a new coffee shop, try a new drink. And then sometimes I get on that fix and give it to myself for 2 or 3 times in a week or one time, whatever I'm feeling. I allow myself to kind of indulge in that because one, it kind of just gives me energy. I love trying new drinks. And I just love coffee. Exercise and coffee,
Yeah.
ironically.
Exercise, coffee, and connection.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I love that because movement is one of mine too. Like anytime that I
Yes.
feel stuck, I actually have a trampoline in my bedroom, one of those little ones. And
Yeah.
anytime I feel stuck, I get on the trampoline and I put the music up so super high and I just jump. I
Yeah.
jump until I'm tired or until like I'm done.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because movement, I associated it with exercise, but when I'm home alone, because I work from home too, so sometimes I just need to step out. But when I'm home and I'm so overwhelmed, I put in my AirPods to some music that I used to love in college. I'm just going to
Yeah,
say that. And I just start dancing by myself in
yeah,
my living room or in the kitchen, whatever it is I'm doing. And so, but yeah, that movement, just like, I don't know, it brings me back to a neutral state where I feel calm again and feel refocused, if you will.
yeah.
So, yeah,
For me, it's like getting out that energy, that like anxious
yeah,
energy from like staying still and forgetting that we have bodies that can move.
yes,
It kind of like shakes it out for me, and then I
yeah,
can center, like you said, and find balance again. But if I don't
absolutely.
remember that, hey, Jeanette, that's a thing that helps you, I forget.
Yes, yeah, you have to be very consciously aware of what you need, right? And I think that's a struggle for a lot of people is that we're a human race of people who are go, 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 right? All the time. And we have to realize that it's okay to stop. I tell my daughter, stop, think, and breathe. Tucker
Yeah.
Turtle is what we call it. And there's a little social story called Tucker Turtle for any parents who are interested. But stop, breathe, and think, right? And we have to remind ourselves of that sometimes because if not, you're just go, go, go with whatever tasks you have at hand. And that ends up causing burnout,
Yeah.
right? So stop, take a deep breath and think like, what do I need to do for me right now so that I can be refocused, re-energized, recentered, and whatever that looks like, allow yourself to do it.
Yeah.
Which again can be tough,
It
right?
can
But
be when you're stuck.
yeah, yeah,
Movement can be the hardest thing for someone that's stuck on that island of isolation and feeling
mhm,
depressed and anxious. Like
yeah,
movement is actually painful at times when you're
yes.
stuck there.
Yes, yeah. So it doesn't have to be something big and extreme, like go and join a gym and do exercise 3, 4, 5 times a week. It doesn't have to be that. It can be something as simple as put an AirPod on, dance for 30 seconds, it could be go outside and just walk for 2 minutes,
Mhm.
right? 5 minutes, whatever feels doable and comfortable, right? Because you want it to be sustainable in your life as well, right? Because the worst thing that you can do is say, I'm going to, like for me, I'm going to go run a marathon in 2 months.
Yeah.
No, that isn't realistic, right? I know that. And I've had to accept that that's not where I'm at, but what is going to help me get to where I want to be, whether it's running a marathon or not,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah,
Baby steps.
baby steps,
Yeah, Tony
absolutely.
Robbins. I'm a follower of Tony Robbins, right?
Yeah,
Always 2 little millimeter shifts. Like, what's
yes,
next? Tiny
yeah,
little shifts that are going to get you to where you want to be. So many of us start like we're down in the dumps and we want to like run the marathon tomorrow and
right.
forget
Yeah,
that. I mean, it takes planning, it takes practice, it takes dedication and motivation and consistency. And
yeah.
when you're on that island for so long, it is really hard to go from 0 to 100.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, if you try to go from 0 to 100, you will burn out. You will crash and burn
Mhm.
pretty immediately. And then you'll fall back into that cycle of the self perpetuating, like, oh, yeah, I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so the self fulfilling prophecy happens. And so it's again, like you said, taking baby steps to get where you want to be, right? And that's how I think people recreate themselves when they are on that island, right? Is understanding I'm never going to be the person I was pre-kids. I'm never going to be the person I was before I lost this significant person in my life or whatever it may be, but I'm going to be a new version of that person, right?
Yeah, we have that ability to make that choice if we want to stay on that island because of the loss and
Mhm.
the change, or if we want to start working towards this other person here that we know is there. We just gotta wake her up or wake him up and start
Yeah.
little by little.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So baby steps and that's how you will get there.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Christina. Like I love having you here. I love talking to you. What are the three things? I know we talked about a lot today, right? A lot of
Yeah.
great little coins of knowledge. But what are three things that you can tell our audience that they need to remember to get off the island?
Perfect. I love it because the main thing again, I'm probably going to sicken people of saying it, but
Keep
it's
doing it.
connection, stay connected, make new connections to people, and just keep building upon that so that you can get through whatever it is that you're going through. The other thing I would say is just again dig deep into your own personal emotional being, however that may be, and find what is truly holding you back if there is something holding you back. And then from there allow yourself to step out of the comfort zone, right? Like take the leap of faith to start your business or to go back to school or to whatever it may be. Just fill in the blank, right? And so whatever you do, fear is natural. It's going to happen, but don't let it be the driving force of your decision making because that's when things kind of just spiral in a negative direction. And that's what we want to avoid.
Yeah, no, I love that. Now, Christina does have her own practice. Tell us how they can get a hold of you. I don't know if you're accepting new clients, but if you are, how do they reach you?
Yeah, so I have a very small practice right now because I do teach at the university full time. And so I do a lot of teaching, research, things like that. But I am taking just a few more clients on my caseload. You can reach me by email or by phone. I don't have a website or anything like that because I just have not had the time to really make that a thing. But my phone number for my practice is 512. My email is mindfulcoping@outlook.com. That's mindfulcoping@outlook.com. So if you'd like to reach out, reach out.
Yeah. No, you are amazing as a human, amazing as a therapist, and I am just so
Thank
grateful that
you.
you said yes to come on today.
Thank you for
And
having me. I appreciate the opportunity and also just reconnecting with you too, being back, in San Antonio. So I
yes,
am
now
happy
we
to
need
be
to
here.
actually going out and have some coffee. We went to a new place today, me and my new counselors,
Uh-huh.
and it was called Ambassadors Coffee,
Yeah,
off of 1604, and it was beautiful, beautiful.
nice. I have to try it.
Yes, it
I
was
love coffee.
amazing. So maybe we can go and meet up there coming up
Yeah.
soon because it's like you said, it's important to maintain connection, and I think that's the one thing that we lose whenever we get stuck in chaos.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I would love that. And again, thank you for having me. I hope that whoever is listening to this podcast has gained some insight and just maybe some motivation if they were lacking it. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Of course. Bye.